What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Fringe. Sorry that today's video is a little late. I wanted to take some time after last night's live stream to really just kind of soak in what had happened and kind of really discuss what went wrong, what I feel happened in the election. Because Ezra Levant put out a really good tweet about it. I think he's got a very good point, and in fact, I can say that as I left this morning with Mrs. Fringe, we went out to celebrate her birthday this morning. Uh, as we sat down for breakfast in a local restaurant, it almost seemed as if things had changed. There was a certain quietness in the air. People looked defeated. The same energy that was present yesterday wasn't present today. Now, while I have a lot of baffling questions as to how exactly Pierre Poilievre lost his seat in Carleton, many people are speculating it's the lengthy ballot. I disagree. I think that people knew if they wanted to vote for Pierre or not. I don't think the ballot size matters. Do I think 90 candidates should exist in a riding? Absolutely not. Michelle Ferreri losing her seat. There's a lot of things I don't understand about last night that are still yet to come. I want to talk about why Pierre lost the election, and then I have a post-election message for each and every viewer. I hope you stick around for that. Because things are about to change. We did vote for change last night, just not the change we were looking for. First, let's head over. Let's get into what I think caused Pierre Poilievre to lose the election. Ezra Levant, again, he's got some great words on this, and I couldn't have said it better myself. So let's take a look at what Ezra had to say. Why did Pierre Poilievre lose the election? After all, under him, the Conservatives received a higher vote share than any party since 1988, 41.4%. That was enough to give Brian Mulroney a majority government. Mulroney was fighting against a divided left. That's the important thing here. The most important factor in this election was Jagmeet Singh happily euthanizing the NDP, taking it down to just 6.3% and 7 seats. Singh had thrown in the towel years ago and was a de facto liberal for years. It will be interesting to see what patronage he receives as a thank you. Again, I mentioned that last night. I'm not sure how happy the party's going to be with him leaving, although Alberta's former Premier Rachel Notley, the sheriff of Nottingham, is rumored to be throwing her hat into the ring to run federally. So curious to see if she takes over as leader of the NDP. It says here the Green Party went even further, formally canceling nearly 100 of their own candidates explicitly so as not to split the left. Do you guys remember when Elizabeth May said she would do anything to prevent Pierre Poilievre from taking a majority government? That they had the balance hanging in the whims? Left-wing Canadians don't need the NDP or the Greens. Canadians are about to learn how radical Mark Carney is on everything from net zero to foreign policy. He didn't need to keep up the anti-Americanism in his speech last night. The election is over. But he chose to because he believes in realigning Canada with China, just as he's done with Brookfield Asset Management. Again, follow the money. Ezra says, I've called Carney Trudeau 2.0. But smarter and harder working. That's true. And Carney has most of the same team as Trudeau, including the disgraced Rasputin figure, Gerald Butts. But Carney and his extremist wife are deep ideological activists, whereas Trudeau was more of a cliche spouting mascot. Again, puppet master versus the puppeteer. If it helps to understand Carney, know that the company he chaired, Brookfield Asset Management, has $1 trillion under management. It's like BlackRock and just as ideological and dictatorial. Has any Canadian media, other than Rebel News, reported that Carney has integrated last year, or was interrogated last year, by congressional staff accused of extorting coal companies? Yes, in fact, we mentioned that on this channel not too long ago. I believe Poilievre will win the next election. The Trump challenge will resolve itself one way or another. Carney's thin-skinned, domineering personality is already showing itself. He'll soon find out running a caucus and a confederation is different than being a corporate oligarch. I'll give Trudeau this. He could be charming and his wife was embarrassing, but harmless. Carney doesn't have the emotional intelligence and his wife is like Lady Macbeth. More importantly, then personality, all of the issues that cause people to hate Trudeau, housing costs, mass immigration, taxes, wokeism will continue, and people will see that Carney's cabinet is largely the same as Trudeau's was. There has been no change in the Liberals. Again, this is the start of change. People are going to get what they paid for. Now, again, this election wasn't lost by Canada. This election was lost by a small pocket of Ontario. I said it last night on the live stream. I'll say it here. What this country definitely needs, what it desperately needs, if it were to stay together at this point, is electoral reform. GDP has to be a driving factor in how many seats are distributed across the country. Says here, Poilievre's achievements include rebranding the Conservatives as the party of the working man, something that will accelerate as the public slowly realizes just who Mark Carney is and who he listens to. Carney hasn't given up his beliefs in net zero deindustrialization or other World Economic Forum obsessions. There's a reason the regime media don't want you learning about the WEF or what Carney did as a board member. Imagine you're a 25-year-old who can't afford to buy a house and watching the Carney's boomer dance last night and his wife's Elaine Bennis moves. Sorry. I'm so tired from last night's stream, guys. Please. I'm sorry I'm screwing up a lot of the dialogue here, but her Elaine Bennis dance moves. The WEF is like the Bohemian Grove. But for the Europeans and leftists, there's a different temperament for the little people. Expect Carney to keep his promise to lavish money in the CBC state broadcaster party as a reward for their service for the past months, and partly to start campaigning for the next election that could come within a year. I think that's highly likely. I think we'll be back at the polls within a year. Don't be surprised if, as a corollary, Carney reintroduces Trudeau's C-63 Online Harms Act censorship bill. You've already seen how they treat Rebel News. They want citizen journalists to know their place. The good thing on that portion, folks, is that we do have opposition. We do have the Conservative bloc. At least we don't have a Liberal NDP coalition anymore, unless, of course, some arrangements are made in the background. I don't think that's going to come to fruition. Rebel News played a role in this election. We had 318 million views and impressions during the campaign. In York Centre, we helped drive out the pro-Hamas MP Yara Sachs, a bright spot in a gloomy night. It's going to be an interesting year. There are a lot more stories to tell, and the regime media won't tell them, so we will. There's also more need than ever for rebel style of activism, especially for our civil liberties litigation. We have a track record of beating the Liberals in court, especially when it comes to their censorship and their bullying. We're going to need to do much more than that, and I'm going to need you to help do it. I'll share more thoughts on it later, but the results were not as disappointing as I feared. I'm going to touch on that in a second. Come on, don't mope, pick yourselves up and get going. Surely you can see how close we are now. This was the sentence I wanted to touch on. I have been overwhelmingly stockpiled with emails, tweets, people reaching out after last night's live stream saying, Fringe, I've lost all hope. Fringe, thank you for trying to stay positive, but I just feel like my country's collapsing. There's only one option for Alberta, so on and so forth. Out of all of the bad possibilities, worst case scenarios that could have happened last night, the result of last night's election is the best of the worst. We still have some form of control versus what we had with a Liberal NDP coalition. I hope people can see that. I want to furthermore go to what cost the election. I've said on last night's live stream, part of the problem was Pierre Poilievre listened to his team. I've been criticizing his team this whole election. I've said that they've made many missteps. And in fact, I pushed very early on in the campaign that Pierre sit down with YouTubers, with online social media personalities to try and boost his brand. And people said, oh, Fringe, they've already decided they're voting Conservative on your channel, on other channels. There's no need for him to come on there. Yes, there was. You have to drive people to vote. You have to push people that even though they're supporting you to get out and vote. That's one of the things I think cost him in Carleton, is that people thought it was safe probably, and some people didn't see the need to get out and vote. If you look at his rally in Carleton, it was electrifying. People came out in droves. The support was astronomical. How a leader loses his riding when there is no threat of losing said riding absolutely baffles me. Again, we'll dig deeper looks into how that happened. But a brief explanation can be found over here. Abacus Polling did this, and I know people said don't listen to the polls. I said don't listen to the polls. I think if Pierre wanted to listen to people again, he should have gotten motivated with the online community. Instead of denying seats to CBC reporters, CTV reporters, he should have invited social media pundits onto their bus, their plane, whatever, like the pleb did. When you look at what the pleb did, shout out to the pleb for all of his hard work. The guy went around the country propping Pierre up, getting people excited. He had thousands and thousands of viewers. I'm curious what his impressions and views were during those live streams once everything settled. But could you imagine if Pierre would have harnessed that and had all major YouTubers, all major social media pundits out there pushing his brand, saying, let's go, time to bring it home, time for change? Even channels like Northern Perspective and Jasmine Lane didn't secure an interview with Pierre, or weren't able to secure an interview with Pierre until just days before the election. Those interviews, while I'm glad that they happened, and again, I'm glad that some outlets got to sit down with Pierre, so shout out to all of them for getting those opportunities, those interviews should have been out weeks ago, not at the tail end. This is where I go back to Pierre's assistant telling me last summer they needed to keep an arm's length reach away from all the YouTubers that potentially give the Liberals ammunition to come against them. How'd that work out for you? Take a look here at what the most important factors were for deciding the vote. Now let's look at the age groups. When it comes to reducing the cost of living, 30 to 44 age range was the most supporting factor, followed up by 45 to 59. What you're going to notice here is the red line on the next factors, because this is what determined the election. The boomer generation. Now, there are conservative boomers and there were liberal boomers. The sad portion is there's a majority of liberal boomers in Ontario where the majority of seats are decided. Dealing with Donald Trump, overwhelmingly supported by 60 and over. In fact, we showed this on Rebel News' coverage. Anytime they polled anybody, they went out and asked people, how are you voting? Trump was always the first answer. We're worried about Donald Trump. Making housing more affordable. The boomer generation didn't care because they've had $30,000 houses that they bought way back when, now worth $2 million. They don't care. Again, we're talking about liberal boomers here. Improving Canada's healthcare system. The boomers are overwhelmingly supported, which again, the NDP backed. The Liberals claim to back that. They're worried about Pierre's cuts. Growing the economy. Again, the boomers don't care. They're on their way out. Making Canada a better place to live. They could care less. Protecting public services. Overwhelmingly supported by the boomer generation. Managing the federal budget and deficit and debt. The boomers. But again, they worry about a strong dollar. They worry about their investments. Something the younger generation doesn't have a lot of. They often call the generation of 40 and under the ninja generation because they have very little with them. They don't have any GICs. They don't have stocks and bonds. They don't have RRSPs. They're not able to save for those things because regime governments like the Liberals have run it out. I want to take a minute as we cover things in the future, and I can assure you that this channel will be here to cover all the news as it drops, where we go from here. But this video was more to give perspective on what happened last night, how it all happened. This was a small pocket of Ontario of boomer liberal generation that didn't care who they were voting for. They're about to get what they paid for. Change is coming, as I said. Now, we can all crumble and we can cry and we can scream just like the Democrats did, just like the Liberals would have done had we have won last night. We can put our fists in the air and say, oh, it's a sham, it's rigged, it's this, it's that, it's the other thing. I don't believe in any of those things. I think there was an age demographic in a small pocket where our broken electoral system granted access for a corrupt party to stay in power. Hope is on the way. I think things are changing. And while people know where I stand, especially from an Alberta perspective on this channel, I will have to be very careful how I forward those stances in the future. Because again, censorship is already a very relevant thing on this platform. What we have to watch moving forward is how does the country stay together? It's very likely at this point you have multiple provinces talking about leaving. Danielle Smith has already stated that meetings are being held to discuss Alberta's future. People are all over social media right now saying we only have one option. It's time to separate. And if the country falls apart, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think we'll make it to an election a year from now. I don't think we'll get to that point that Pierre Poilievre can fight to rebuild the conservative brand, to get people on board with his platform if everybody's more concerned about separation. For all of the boomer generation of the Liberal side that voted elbows up and for Team Canada, I find it ironic because they have open-heartedly destroyed Canada with their votes. And it's not just from a financial standpoint or the fact that the Liberals are in office. This isn't a matter of taking our ball and going home. This is looking at the bigger picture. The boomer generation of Liberals that voted for Mark Carney have caused a national unity crisis. Not only have they crippled the housing industry, not only have they driven down affordability for the younger generation without care or concern, but they have now actively caused a potential end to Canadian Confederation. And that's scary. However, I'm here to tell you, we need to breathe. Take a day or two. If you're nervous about what's on social media, I've been overwhelmed again with emails of people saying they're upset, they're crying, they can't handle what happened last night. Take a day or two away. Sit down, breathe, get your mind clear. Focus on what's ahead. If you're in the ocean and your boat sinks and you're waiting for help, you don't flap your arms, get tired, and drown. You take your time to be calm. Cooler heads will prevail in this. I think we're going to be okay, provided we don't see any kind of backlash from people that want to talk about separatism. Again, I think it's on the rise. Everyone knows where I stand with it, especially after last night's win. But with that out of the way, let me know what you guys think. Will cooler heads prevail? Do you think the time for that is over? Do you think that there's going to be a rising up? Do you think Pierre has the ability to rebuild the Conservatives? I'll tell you, I'm still in shock watching people like Michelle Ferrari losing her seat last night. And again, we're going to cover that here on the channel. But stay strong, folks. We've built an amazing community on this channel, which, by the way, if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, make sure you do. Join our amazing community on this platform. This community is here for each other. We're going to be here for each other. Again, this is the best of the worst case scenarios that we're in. I think that there's a little more control going into the House of Commons as to the radicalism that can be done against Canadians. Time's going to tell on that one. I will keep you guys up to date. Don't forget to leave a comment and a thumbs up down below, especially now. Censorship is going to be unbelievable. Make sure you join the channel. Click your bell for all notifications. Join me live here on the channel this Friday night for Friday Night Fringe. I'll be joined by my beautiful wife, Mrs. Fringe, as we talk about everything that's happened this week in politics. And boy, there's going to be a lot to talk about this week. We're going to talk about everything we know that's coming ahead, and we're going to hear what you have to say outside of making these videos in the comments section. I look forward to hearing every Friday what you guys have to say, but let me tell you, this Friday, I'm most importantly looking forward to what you have to say starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central here on the channel. I hope everybody's doing okay. I hope you have a better rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.